15 doctors had given up on the boy, until the cleaner noticed a life-saving detail. Dorothy Johnson had been cleaning the floors at Mercy General Hospital for 23 years, but she had never seen a situation as desperate as the boy in room 312. 15 specialists had already examined the boy, who was only 9 years old, and they all reached the same frustrating conclusion. They didn't know what was happening to him. "Doctor, for God's sake, there has to be something you can do," begged Jennifer, the boy's mother, holding her son's hand, which seemed to grow weaker by the day. The boy's name was Ethan. He had light hair and blue eyes that grew dimmer with each day he spent in that Philadelphia hospital. Dr. William Parker, the head of the medical team, adjusted his glasses and sighed heavily. "Mrs. Jennifer, we've done every test possible: MRI, CT scan, comprehensive blood work, a biopsy. We can't identify the cause of Ethan's progressive weakness." Dorothy Johnson stopped mopping the hallway when she overheard the conversation. She didn't have an education, having left school in the 5th grade to work. But she had something many doctors lost over time: the ability to observe small details. "But he's getting worse every day," insisted Jennifer, tears streaming down her face. "Yesterday he could still sit up in bed. Today he can barely keep his eyes open." Dr. Michael, the youngest doctor on the team, looked at his colleagues uncomfortably. He had graduated just 2 years ago and still held on to the hope that the veterans seemed to have lost. "Let's try a few more specific tests," he said, earning a disapproving look from his boss. "Michael, we've already spent a fortune on tests. The boy needs palliative care, not more fruitless investigations," Dr. William replied coldly. Dorothy Johnson felt her heart tighten. She had a grandson the same age as Ethan, and she couldn't imagine that mother's despair. She continued cleaning but paid attention to every word. "Palliative care?" Jennifer questioned, her voice choked. "You're giving up on my son?" "We're not giving up," Dr. William tried to sound gentle. "We're being realistic. Sometimes medicine has its limitations." Jennifer broke down into sobs. Ethan, weak as he was, tried to reach out his hand to comfort her. "Don't cry, Mommy. I'm going to get better," the boy murmured in a faint voice. Dorothy Johnson had to lean against the wall. That scene broke her heart. She had raised 5 children alone after her husband abandoned her, and she knew what it was like to fight for a child's life. That same afternoon, while cleaning other rooms, Dorothy couldn't get Ethan out of her head. She had noticed something that bothered her, but she didn't quite know what it was. It was like a tingling in her mind, a feeling that she had missed some important detail. During her break, she looked for Brenda, her closest co-worker. "Bren, do you know about the case of the boy in 312? "Ah, Ethan? Poor kid. They say the doctors don't know what to do anymore. Did you notice anything different about him?" Brenda stopped eating her sandwich and looked at Dorothy with curiosity. "Different how?" "I can't explain. It's like there's a pattern, you know. But I can't identify it." "Dorothy, you're not a doctor. Leave it to the doctors." But Dorothy couldn't let it go. Over the next few days, whenever she passed by the hallway of room 312, she paid attention to everything. The visiting hours, the medications the boy received, the food that was brought to his room. It was on Thursday that she noticed something peculiar. Ethan's grandfather, Mr. George, always arrived at 2 in the afternoon, bringing a small jar of homemade jam. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "It's pumpkin jam that his grandma makes," explained Jennifer to a nurse. "It's the only thing he still has any appetite for." Dorothy stopped what she was doing. Pumpkin jam. Ethan always ate some when his grandfather arrived, and a few hours later, he seemed to be worse. Could it be a coincidence? She started paying closer attention. On Friday, Mr. George arrived promptly at 2 in the afternoon with the little jar. Ethan ate a few spoonfuls of the jam, smiled at his grandfather, and even seemed more cheerful for a few minutes. By 6 in the evening, when Dorothy was doing the cleaning for the night shift, Ethan was vomiting and weaker than he had been in the morning. On Saturday, the same thing. Jam at 2, worse by 6. On Sunday, Mr. George didn't come to the hospital because he had a cold. Ethan was stable all day, didn't vomit, and even managed to play a little with some drawings his mother had brought. Dorothy felt her heart race. It couldn't be a coincidence. Something in the grandma's jam was making the boy sick. But how could she, a simple cleaner, convince 15 doctors that she had discovered something they had missed? On Monday, she looked for Dr. Michael in the hallway. He was the youngest. Maybe he'd be more open to listening. "Doctor, can I tell you something about Ethan?" Michael stopped and looked at her with surprise. "Of course, go ahead. Have you noticed that he always gets worse after eating the jam his grandfather brings?" Michael was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. "Are you sure about that? I've been observing it for a week. When his grandfather didn't come on Sunday, he had a much better day." "I'll talk to the team about this," said Michael, seeming genuinely interested. Dorothy felt a flicker of hope, but it was soon frustrated. Dr. William called Michael for a private conversation in the office. "Michael, you can't listen to cleaning staff about medical matters. That is completely inappropriate." "But doctor, she made an interesting observation." "Interesting? A cleaner making diagnoses? Have you lost your mind?" "It's not a diagnosis, it's just an observation about the patient's pattern of behavior." Dr. William adjusted his glasses impatiently. "Michael, I have 30 years in medicine. I've seen hundreds of cases like this. Desperate relatives will do anything to hold on to hope, including inventing patterns that don't exist, and staff end up being influenced by that atmosphere." "But what if she's right?" "She is not right, and I don't want any more discussion about it. The boy is being transferred to palliative care on Thursday." Michael left the room frustrated, but didn't have the courage to contradict his boss. Dorothy noticed that Dr. Michael avoided her gaze in the following days. She understood that he had been discouraged from investigating her observation. On Tuesday, Mr. George returned to the hospital with the jam. Dorothy made a point of staying nearby, cleaning the same hallway repeatedly. Ethan ate the jam at 2:15. By 5:40 he started feeling sick. By 6:30 he was vomiting and had abdominal pain. Dorothy couldn't take it anymore. She found Jennifer in the hallway when she came out of the room, visibly upset. "Mrs. Jennifer, can I speak with you?" Jennifer looked at her with eyes swollen from crying. "Of course, Dorothy. What is it?" "Have you noticed that Ethan always gets worse after eating the jam his grandfather brings?" Jennifer looked confused. "What do you mean? I've worked here a long time and I started observing. Every time he eats the jam, a few hours later he gets sick. On Sunday, when his grandfather didn't come, he had a much better day." Jennifer was silent for a long time, seeming to process the information. "Do you think it could be the jam?" "I don't know, I'm not a doctor. But I think it's worth looking into. I'm going to talk to the doctors about it." "I already spoke with Dr. Michael, but it seems they didn't take it seriously." Jennifer took a deep breath. "Then I'll insist. He's my son. I have the right to question everything." On Wednesday morning, Jennifer went to see Dr. Parker. "Doctor, I need to talk about a possibility that no one has considered yet." "What would that be, Mrs. Jennifer?" "An employee here alerted me to a pattern in Ethan's behavior. He always gets worse after eating a jam that my father-in-law brings." Dr. Parker sighed with impatience. "Mrs. Jennifer, I understand your desperation, but we can't base our decisions on amateur observations from employees." "Amateur?" Jennifer raised her voice. "She has been here for over 20 years, and I've started to notice it too. My son really does get worse after the jam." Dr. Michael, who was passing by in the hallway, stopped when he heard the argument. "Dr. Parker, perhaps we should consider—" "Michael, we already talked about this. But if the mother is noticing the same pattern—" Dr. Parker looked at the two of them with irritation. "You want me to write a report saying we suspect a homemade jam is causing a complex medical syndrome?" "We want you to investigate every possibility," Jennifer replied firmly. "All right," Dr. Parker reluctantly gave in. "We'll hold off on the jam for a few days and observe." On Thursday, when Mr. George arrived with the little jar of jam, Jennifer intercepted him in the hallway. "Dad, the doctor's asked to hold off on the jam for a few days. It's to see if it makes a difference in Ethan's condition." Mr. George looked offended. "You think your mother-in-law's jam is hurting the boy?" "We don't know, Dad. It's just to be sure. Your mother-in-law will be hurt. She wakes up early every day to make this special jam for her grandson. I'll explain it to her. It's for Ethan's own good. Mr. George grumbled but agreed. That day, Ethan didn't eat the jam. He spent the entire afternoon stable, played a little with his mother, and even asked to watch cartoons. On Friday, the same thing. Without the jam, Ethan showed more energy than he had had in weeks. On Saturday, Dr. Michael stopped by the room in the morning and was surprised to find Ethan sitting up in bed, coloring in a book. "How are you feeling today, champ?" "Better, doctor. I haven't felt sick since yesterday." Dr. Michael left the room thoughtfully and looked for Dorothy in the hallway. "Dorothy, thank you for the observation about the jam. It seems you were right." Dorothy smiled, but soon turned serious. "Doctor, now we need to find out what's in the jam that's hurting the boy. I'll suggest we analyze the next batch of jam the grandmother makes." On Sunday, Jennifer went to her mother-in-law's house to get the jam recipe and better understand the ingredients. Mrs. Margaret, a 68-year-old woman, welcomed her daughter-in-law into the kitchen where she always prepared the jams for her grandson. "Jennifer, how is my little grandson?" "Better, Mrs. Margaret. Actually, I came here because the doctors suspect that something in the jam might be hurting him." Mrs. Margaret was visibly upset. "My jam? But I make it with so much love." "I know, Mrs. Margaret. Can you show me exactly how you make it?" The mother-in-law took Jennifer to the pantry, where she kept the ingredients. "I use sweet pumpkin, granulated sugar, cinnamon and cloves, everything fresh." "And the sugar, where does it come from?" "I buy it at the corner market." Mrs. Margaret stopped mid-sentence with a doubtful expression. "Actually, for about 2 months, I've been using a sugar that I got from my friend Robert." "Sugar you were given?" "Yes, he works at a distribution company and always brings some samples home. He said it was special sugar, sweeter than the regular kind." Jennifer felt a chill in her stomach. "Do you still have this sugar?" Mrs. Margaret showed a bag without a label, only with a handwritten tag, "Special sugar for culinary use." "Mrs. Margaret, since when have you been using this sugar?" "Ever since Ethan was hospitalized. I wanted to make a very special treat for him." The two women looked at each other in silence, beginning to understand the gravity of the situation. "We need to take this sugar to the hospital immediately," said Jennifer. Early Monday morning, Jennifer arrived at the hospital with the bag of sugar. Dr. Michael received her and promised to send the material for urgent laboratory analysis. "The results should be ready in 48 hours, he explained. Meanwhile, Ethan continued to improve without the treat. On Tuesday, he managed to walk around the room and even asked to go to the hospital courtyard. Dorothy Johnson observed the boy's improvement with a mix of relief and worry. If her suspicion was correct, it meant Ethan had been accidentally poisoned for nearly 3 months. On Wednesday morning, Dr. Michael received the results of the laboratory tests. His face paled as he read the report. The sugar contained high levels of an industrial sweetener not approved for human consumption, plus traces of chemicals used in processing sugar for industrial purposes. "My God," he murmured, rushing to show the result to Dr. William Parker. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Dr. William Parker read the report twice before speaking. "This sugar is not for human consumption. It's used in industrial processes. And the boy was consuming it for 3 months," Michael added. "We need to start a detoxification treatment immediately." The two doctors rushed to Ethan's room. Jennifer was reading a magazine while her son played with some building blocks. "Mrs. Jennifer, we have the results of the sugar analysis," said Dr. William Parker in a serious voice. Jennifer dropped the magazine immediately. "And?" "The sugar contains toxic substances not approved for human consumption. That's what was making Ethan sick." Jennifer brought her hands to her face in shock. "My God, you mean my mother-in-law was poisoning my son without knowing?" "It was an accident," Dr. Michael tried to reassure her. "She had no knowledge about the sugar's true origin." "And now, what do we do?" "We are going to start a treatment to eliminate the toxins from his system." The fact that he stopped consuming the sugar a few days ago was already a big step. Ethan, who was playing, looked at the adults. "Mommy, why is everyone sad? I'm feeling better." Jennifer knelt beside the bed and hugged her son. "Because Mommy found out why you were sick, my love, and now you're going to get completely better." Dr. William Parker left the room and looked for Dorothy in the hallway. "Dorothy, I need to speak with you." She stopped cleaning and looked at him expectantly. "You were right about the treat. You saved that boy's life." Dorothy felt her eyes well up. "Is the boy going to be okay?" "He's going to make a full recovery, thanks to your observation." "I just did what any mother would do, Doctor. Observe and worry." Dr. William Parker was silent for a moment, reflecting on his own words from the previous days. "Dorothy, I owe you an apology. I dismissed your observation and almost made a terrible mistake." "You don't need to apologize, Doctor. The important thing is that Ethan is going to be okay." That same afternoon, Jennifer went to her mother-in-law's house to tell her about the discovery. She found Mrs. Margaret in the kitchen preparing a new treat for her grandson. "Mrs. Margaret, I need to tell you something important about the sugar." Her mother-in-law stopped what she was doing and sat down at the table. Jennifer explained all the test results and how the sugar was slowly poisoning Ethan. Mrs. Margaret broke down in tears. "My God, Jennifer, I almost killed my grandson." "You didn't know, Mrs. Margaret. It was an accident." "But how could I have been so careless? I should have been suspicious of sugar with no known origin." "Don't blame yourself. What's important is that we know what it was now, and Ethan is going to recover." "I will never forgive myself for this." Jennifer hugged her mother-in-law. "Mrs. Margaret, you made that jam every day out of love for Ethan. The problem was the sugar, not you. I need to talk to my friend Robert about this sugar. Other people might be using it too." On Thursday, Mrs. Margaret went to her friend Robert's house to question him about the sugar. Robert Miller was a simple man who had worked at an industrial food products distribution company for 15 years. "Brenda, it's so good that you came to visit me," he said, opening the door. "Robert, I need to talk about that sugar you gave me." "Of course. Do you need more? I can bring more." "I don't want any more, Robert. That sugar almost killed my grandson." Robert looked confused. "What do you mean, Brenda?" Mrs. Margaret explained the whole situation. Robert's face grew pale as she spoke. "My God, Mrs. Margaret, I didn't know it was toxic for humans." "Where did you get this sugar?" "From the company where I work. Sometimes there's leftover sugar from the industrial samples, and the supervisor lets us take it home." "Industrial sugar?" "It's used to make animal feed and for some chemical processing. I thought sugar was sugar." Mrs. Margaret sat down heavily on a chair. "Robert, did you give this sugar to anyone else?" "I did. I gave it to my neighbor, Mrs. Barbara, and to my brother over in Camden." "We need to warn them immediately." Robert ran to get the phone. The call to Mrs. Barbara revealed that she had used the sugar in sweets for her grandchildren, and 2 children had shown strange symptoms in the last few weeks. The parents thought it was a virus. The call to his brother in Camden was even more worrying. He had used the sugar to make sweets that he sold at a local fair. "My God, Robert, how many people could have been poisoned because of this?" asked Mrs. Margaret. "I don't know, Brenda. But we're going to warn everyone and fix this situation." Back at the hospital, Ethan was showing impressive improvements every day. The detoxification treatment was being successful, and the toxins were being eliminated from his system. Dorothy Johnson made a point of stopping by room 312 whenever possible to follow the boy's recovery. On Friday, she found Ethan playing in the hallway with other young patients. "Look, Aunt Dorothy," he shouted when he saw her. "I managed to walk to the end of the hallway without getting tired." "What a joy, my boy," replied Dorothy, her heart full of happiness. Jennifer approached her. "Dorothy, I don't know how to thank you for what you did for my son." "There's no need to thank me. Any mother would have done the same." "But you're not Ethan's mother, and yet you cared enough to save his life." Dorothy smiled. "All these boys admitted here are a little bit my children too. I see them grow, get better, leave cured. That's the most beautiful part of my job." That afternoon, Dr. William Parker called a meeting with the entire medical team to discuss Ethan's case. "Colleagues, this case has taught us a valuable lesson about medical humility," he began. A cleaning staff member identified a pattern that 15 specialized doctors failed to see. Dr. Michael raised his hand. Dr. Parker, I think we should create a protocol to listen to observations from all staff members who have direct contact with patients. I agree, replied the chief. Dorothy Johnson showed us that diagnosis doesn't just depend on technical knowledge, but also on careful observation and genuine concern. I suggest we have a monthly meeting where nurses, technicians, cleaning staff, and other employees can share observations about the patients, suggested Dr. Michael. Excellent idea. I'll propose this to the board. On Saturday, Mrs. Margaret went to the hospital for the first time since she found out about the sugar. She was afraid of seeing her grandson, feeling guilty about what had happened. Jennifer greeted her in the hallway. "How is he?" asked her mother-in-law with teary eyes. "He's doing great, and he's eager to see you. He's not angry with me." "Mrs. Margaret, Ethan doesn't really know what happened. To him, you're just the loving grandma who always visited." When Mrs. Margaret entered the room, Ethan shouted with joy, "Grandma, you took so long to come." "I'm sorry, sweetie. Grandma was a little sick. But are you better now? And I'm feeling much better too." Mrs. Margaret hugged her grandson with tears in her eyes. "Grandma will bring you a new treat, okay? Made with carefully selected ingredients. Can it be brigadeiro?" "It can be whatever you want, my love." Jennifer watched the scene and felt her heart swell with emotion. The family was coming together again, stronger after almost losing what mattered most. Over the weekend, the story about the industrial sugar spread through the city. Robert had managed to identify about 30 families who had received the contaminated sugar. The distribution company where he worked started an internal investigation and discovered there was a failure in inventory control. Industrial sugar was being mixed with samples of commercial sugar. On Monday, a company representative went to the hospital to speak with Ethan's family. "Mr. George, Mrs. Jennifer," said the man in a suit, "I'm here on behalf of Central Distribution Commission to take responsibility for what happened." "And what are you going to do about it?" questioned Jennifer. "First, we will cover all of Ethan's medical costs. Second, we have implemented new safety protocols, so this never happens again." "And the other affected families?" "We are mapping all the cases and offering the same support. Mr. George remained silent throughout the conversation, still processing the guilt of having brought the sugar home. After the company representative left, Jennifer sat down next to her father-in-law. "Dad, it wasn't your fault. But I should have asked about the sugar's origin. None of us knew. The important thing is that Ethan is recovering. That cleaning lady, she saved my grandson." "She sure did, and she taught us about paying attention to the details." On Tuesday, Ethan was discharged from the hospital. The entire hospital team gathered in the hallway to say goodbye to him. Dorothy Johnson was in the group, somewhat hidden behind the doctors. "Where's Aunt Dorothy?" asked Ethan, looking around with his eyes. "I'm here, sweetie," she said, stepping forward. Ethan ran and hugged her tightly. "Thank you for taking care of me, Aunt Dorothy. Whenever you need me, I'll be here." Dr. William approached the group. "Dorothy, on behalf of the entire medical team, I want to thank you for your dedication and observation. You taught us that medicine goes beyond books and tests." "Doctor, I just did my job, taking care of people." "You did much more than that. You saved a life." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The following Wednesday, Mercy General Hospital implemented the first Dorothy Protocol, a monthly meeting where all employees could share observations about patients. Dorothy was invited to participate in the first meeting as a special consultant. "Dorothy, we want you to help train other staff on what to observe in patients," explained Dr. William Parker. "But doctor, I don't have the education for that. You have something more important: experience and genuine care. That's not something you learn in books." The first meeting of the Dorothy Protocol happened on a Thursday afternoon. Doctors, nurses, technicians, cleaning, kitchen and security staff all attended. "Team," began Dr. William Parker, "you all who spend more time in direct contact with patients often notice things that we doctors miss in the rush of our daily routines." Brenda, Dorothy's colleague, raised her hand. "Doctor, I've noticed a few things, but I always thought it wasn't my place to speak." Starting today, it is your place. All of you are part of the care team. During the meeting, several staff members shared observations about patients they had never mentioned before. Susan, from the kitchen, talked about an older gentleman who always left half his food on the plate but devoured the fruit. "I think he has difficulty chewing solid foods," she said. Dr. Michael wrote the information down. "I'll examine his dentures tomorrow." Clarence, from security, mentioned a lady who always asked him to stay and chat in her room because she felt lonely. "Perhaps she needs psychological support," suggested a nurse. The meeting lasted 2 hours and generated 15 important observations that were incorporated into patient care. Dorothy left the meeting feeling emotional. "I never thought I'd one day be sitting at a table with doctors, giving my opinion on cases." "You deserve to be there," said Jennifer, who had come to the hospital for Ethan's follow-up appointment. "How is Ethan?" "Perfect. He's regained all his weight and energy. He's back to studying normally. It's like he was never sick." "Thank God." "Thank you, Dorothy. You're the one who insisted when everyone else had given up." A month later, Ethan's case was presented at a regional medical conference as an example of collaborative diagnosis. Dr. Michael was chosen to present the case. "Colleagues," he said to an audience of 200 doctors, "this case taught us that effective diagnosis results from multidisciplinary observation." A cleaning staff member identified a pattern that escaped 15 specialists. The audience murmured in surprise. "How is that possible?" asked a doctor in the front row, because she was observing with her heart, not just her brain. She was genuinely concerned with the child's well-being, without the pressure of medical protocols or professional ego. After the presentation, several hospitals in the region contacted Mercy General to learn about the Dorothy Protocol and implement similar programs. Dorothy Johnson became a minor celebrity in the hospital world, being invited to give talks on observation and humanized care. "Dorothy," Dr. William Parker said on one such occasion, "have you ever thought about studying nursing?" "Doctor, at 52. And having stopped school in the 5th grade? It's never too late to learn. And you already have the most important foundation, compassion and observational skills." "I'll think about it." 2 months later, Dorothy was enrolled in an adult education program to finish high school. Her goal was to study nursing. Ethan, fully recovered, would visit her at the hospital whenever he had a follow-up appointment. "Aunt Dorothy, when you become a nurse, will you keep taking care of children?" "Of course I will, my boy. It's what I love doing most. When I grow up, I want to work in a hospital too, to take care of people like you did for me." Dorothy smiled, feeling that she had planted an important seed in that boy's heart. 6 months after Ethan's case, Mercy General Hospital received a news crew from a local television station interested in the story. "Mrs. Dorothy," said the reporter, "how do you feel being recognized for saving a child's life? I don't feel like a heroine or anything like that. I just did what anyone with a heart would do. I paid attention and I cared. But many people wouldn't have had the courage to confront expert doctors. When it's about a child suffering, there is no confrontation. There is an urgency to help." The report aired on a Thursday night and had repercussions throughout the state. Dorothy received hundreds of supportive messages from people who were inspired by her story. One of the messages that moved her the most came from a cleaner at another hospital. "Mrs. Dorothy, I've worked in cleaning for 15 years, and I always wanted to speak up about things I observe in patients, but I never had the courage. Your story gave me the strength to speak out. Thank you for showing that our opinion also has value." Dr. William called Dorothy in for a special conversation in his office. "Dorothy, I want to make a proposal to you." "Go ahead, Doctor." "How would you like to be our official consultant for humanized observation? It's a new position we're creating." "What would I do exactly?" "You would continue with your normal duties, but you would also train staff on patient observation and participate in clinical meetings when necessary." "And the salary?" "It would be increased by 40%. Dorothy was moved. "I accept, Doctor, but on one condition." "What is it?" "I want Ethan to be the first to know about my promotion." On Friday, when Ethan came for his routine checkup, Dorothy was waiting for him with a surprise. "Ethan, I have some news to tell you." "What is it, Aunt Dorothy?" I'm going to be the hospital's consultant for humanized observation. I'm going to teach other people to pay attention to patients like I did with you." Ethan shouted with joy and hugged her. "So you're going to help other kids like you helped me?" "I'm going to help all the people who need it. Aunt Dorothy, you're my guardian angel." "No, my child, you were my angel. You taught me that observing with love can save lives." 1 year after Ethan's case, the Dorothy Protocol had been implemented in 15 hospitals in the Philadelphia metropolitan area. Dorothy Johnson had become a national reference in humanized care and multidisciplinary health observation. She had finished high school at 53 and was in her second semester of nursing school. Ethan, now 10 years old, kept in constant contact with her and always told his friends that when he grew up he would work at the hospital to care for people. Dr. William wrote a scientific article about the case, which was published in an international medical journal under the title Collaborative Diagnosis: How Non-Medical Observation Can Save Lives. The article mentioned Dorothy Johnson by name, recognizing her fundamental contribution to medicine. Dr. Michael was promoted to head of a new wing of the hospital, dedicated to complex cases, always applying the multidisciplinary observation protocol he had learned from Dorothy. Mrs. Margaret never made jam again without meticulously checking the origin of every ingredient. She became a kind of food safety advocate in the community, advising other grandmothers on kitchen precautions. Robert Miller was promoted at the distribution company and became responsible for the new quality control department, dedicated to preventing industrial sugar from being mixed with commercial products. The company created a support fund for the families affected by the contaminated sugar and implemented strict safety protocols. Jennifer went back to work part-time, knowing that Ethan was fully recovered. She became a volunteer at the hospital, helping other mothers who were going through difficult situations with hospitalized children. Mr. George never took homemade food to his grandson again without first showing all the ingredients to Jennifer. She developed an understandable paranoia about food, but it guaranteed the family's safety. In December of that same year, Mercy General Hospital organized a special party to celebrate 1 year of the Dorothy Protocol. Ethan was invited as the guest of honor, along with his family. During the party, Dr. William gave an emotional speech. "A year ago, a simple cleaning worker taught us the greatest lesson any doctor can learn. Diagnosis isn't just about technical knowledge, but about careful observation and genuine concern." The audience gave a standing ovation. Dorothy Johnson showed us that saving lives is a team effort, where every person who truly cares can make a difference. Dorothy was on stage, visibly moved. "Everyone," she said, taking the microphone. "I didn't save Ethan alone. We saved him together. Me by observing, Dr. Michael by listening, Mrs. Jennifer by insisting, Dr. William by agreeing to investigate. It was a team effort. But you planted the seed of observation," Dr. William countered, "and you all watered it with medical knowledge. A seed only grows if it has good soil and constant care." The party lasted late into the night, with staff from all hospital departments sharing stories about how the Dorothy Protocol had changed their way of working. Susan, from the kitchen, told how her observations about eating habits had helped identify 3 cases of depression in elderly patients. Clarence, from security, reported how he started paying attention to signs of domestic violence in patients and helped 5 women seek assistance. Every employee had a story about how they had learned to look beyond their technical duties. At the end of the party, Ethan approached Dorothy. "Aunt Dorothy, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, my boy. Why did you care about me? You didn't even know me." Dorothy knelt down to be at eye level with him. "Ethan, when you work in a hospital for a long time, you realize that every child admitted is special. You all teach me every day about courage, about not giving up, about finding joy even when you're suffering. But I was very sick. Even the doctors had given up. That's exactly why I couldn't give up. Someone needed to keep believing in you." Ethan hugged her tightly. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Aunt Dorothy. Thank you for teaching me that observing with love can work miracles." 2 years after Ethan's case, Dorothy Johnson graduated as a nurse at 55 years of age. The graduation was an emotional celebration attended by the entire medical team of Mercy General Hospital and Ethan with his family. During her graduation speech, Dorothy dedicated her diploma to all the patients who had passed through her life. This diploma isn't just mine. It belongs to every child who taught me about resilience, to every elderly person who taught me about wisdom, to every family who taught me about unconditional love. Dr. William was in the audience, proud of the employee who had become a professional colleague. After graduation, Dorothy continued working at Mercy General Hospital, now as a nurse specialized in humanized observation. She created a training course that was adopted by dozens of hospitals across the United States. Multidisciplinary Clinical Observation: How Everyone Can Contribute to Diagnosis. The course taught employees from all hospital areas to identify patterns of behavior, subtle symptoms, and warning signs that might go unnoticed in a traditional medical assessment. Ethan, now a teenager, kept in constant contact with Dorothy. At 15, he did volunteer work at the hospital during school vacations, always saying he wanted to pursue a career in healthcare. "Aunt Dorothy, I've decided I'm going to study medicine," he announced one Saturday afternoon. "That's wonderful, my boy. You're going to be a very special doctor." "Why?" "Because you learned from a young age the value of observation and care, and you will never forget that the person who saved your life was someone who truly cared. When I graduate, I want to work here at Mercy General, by your side." "I'll be here waiting for you, Dr. Ethan." They laughed together, imagining the future. 5 years after Ethan's case, the Dorothy Protocol had become a public health policy in Pennsylvania. All public and affiliated hospitals in the state were required to implement monthly multidisciplinary meetings where staff from all areas could share observations about patients. Dorothy Johnson was invited by the state's health secretary to be the state coordinator of the program. "Mrs. Dorothy, your story changed the way we practice medicine in Pennsylvania," said the secretary during the inauguration ceremony. "Mr. Secretary, I didn't change anything. I just showed that caring for people has always been teamwork." The state program generated impressive results: a 30% reduction in late diagnoses, a 25% increase in patient satisfaction, and a 40% savings in unnecessary tests. Other states began requesting consultancy to implement similar programs. Dorothy traveled across the country giving lectures on humanized observation in healthcare. In every lecture, she always told the story of Ethan and how a simple observation about eating patterns saved a child's life. "Everyone," she would say to audiences of doctors, nurses, and hospital administrators, "diagnosis is not a privilege of those with a university degree. It is a responsibility of those who have the heart to observe and the courage to speak up." 10 years after Ethan's case, Dorothy Johnson received the title of Doctor Honoris Causa from the University of Pennsylvania. The ceremony was televised and watched by millions of people across the United States. Ethan, now a final-year medical student, was in the audience along with his entire family. During her acceptance speech, Dorothy dedicated the honor to all the anonymous hospital staff who care for lives quietly. This title represents all the janitors, cooks, security guards, technicians, and assistants who work in this country's hospitals with dedication and love, even without recognition. You are the true heroes of American healthcare. You who spend the most time with patients, who listen to their anxieties, who observe their needs beyond clinical symptoms. The audience rose in emotional applause. After the ceremony, Ethan sought out Dorothy. "Aunt Dorothy, or rather Dr. Dorothy," he said jokingly. "For you, always Aunt Dorothy," she replied, laughing. "I have some news to tell you." "Tell me, my boy." "I was accepted into the pediatric residency here at Mercy General. I'm going to work with you," Dorothy cried with emotion. "My dream has come true, Ethan. You've come back home." "Actually, I never left. This hospital has always been my second home, thanks to you." They hugged for a long time, 2 generations united by the experience of nearly losing and managing to save a life. Today, 15 years after the case that changed their lives, Dorothy Johnson continues to work at Mercy General Hospital. At 67, she is the Director of Humanization and Clinical Observation, a position created especially for her. All new hospital employees undergo training with her on humanized observation. Ethan graduated from medical school and completed his residency in pediatrics. He is currently a pediatrician at Mercy General and works in constant partnership with Dorothy. Together, they developed a pediatric care protocol that is a national benchmark, always based on multidisciplinary observation and humanized care. Dr. William retired at 70, but continues to teach at the medical school about collaborative diagnosis and medical humility, always telling the story of Dorothy and Ethan. Dr. Michael is now the clinical director of Mercy General Hospital and keeps the monthly meetings of the Dorothy Protocol as an absolute priority. Jennifer works as a family support coordinator at the hospital, helping parents who are going through the anguish of having their children hospitalized. Mrs. Margaret, at 83 years old, still makes jam for her grandson, but now she also makes it for other children in the hospital, always with strictly verified ingredients. Mr. George has become an advocate for food safety and gives lectures in schools about the dangers of products of unknown origin. Mercy General Hospital is now an international reference for humanized care and collaborative diagnosis. Medical delegations from various countries visit the hospital to learn about the Dorothy Protocol and multidisciplinary observation. Dorothy Johnson wrote a book about her experience, Observing with the Heart: How a Janitor Revolutionized Medicine. The book became a bestseller and has been translated into 15 languages. All the book's proceeds are donated to a scholarship fund for children of hospital employees who wish to study in the healthcare field. To this day, Dorothy continues to make her rounds through the hospital halls, observing, caring, paying attention to the details that others might not see. She always says that her greatest pride is not the titles or recognitions, but knowing that her story has inspired thousands of people to take better care of each other. And every night, before leaving the hospital, she passes by the old room 312, now called the Ethan Dorothy Room, where a plaque briefly tells the story that changed American medicine. The plaque ends with a phrase that has become the motto of Mercy General Hospital. Observing with love can save lives. Anyone in any role can make a difference in someone's life. Ethan, now Dr. Ethan, always ends his appointments by asking the children if they have anything different to tell him, anything that their parents or other doctors might not have noticed. He learned from Dorothy that the best clues for a diagnosis sometimes come from the simplest observations and the most attentive hearts. And so, the story of a janitor who cared enough to look beyond the obvious continues to save lives every day, proving that the most powerful medicine is the one that combines technical knowledge with human compassion. Every employee who joins Mercy General Hospital learns from day one that their role goes far beyond technical tasks. Everyone is responsible for observing, caring for, and protecting the lives that pass through those halls. And every life saved since then carries a bit of Dorothy Johnson's dedication. The janitor who taught the entire world that observing with love is the most powerful form of medicine that exists. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this touching story about Dorothy Johnson and little Ethan. Do you believe that careful observation can really make such a difference in people's lives? Leave your opinion in the comments and share if you know any similar stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.